The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene has become something of a manifesto for young entrepreneurs, aspiring leaders, and anyone who has read it. But 99% of the people who read it either come away scandalized or use it as a handbook of little tricks to apply at work. Both have completely misunderstood the message the book was trying to convey. And this isn't my opinion. The author himself has said it. Today I want to talk to you about the 5 most misunderstood laws, the ones that make people cry scandal, the ones that get labeled as toxic or manipulative. But in reality, there is no scandal at all, because this is simply human nature. Whether you like to admit it or not, we are often far less pure than we think. The truth Greene describes is uncomfortable, but it is real. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, have you ever read the 48 Laws of Power? And if so, which law struck you the most? I'm curious to know. The first law that is often misunderstood is law number 3. Conceal your intentions. Let's say you want to obtain something, a job, an investment, a relationship. Modern instinct tells you be authentic, be transparent, communicate clearly, show who you really are. And Greene looks at you and says, that's how they'll tear you apart. The third law says, conceal your intentions, use ambiguity, misdirection. Don't let people see where you're really going. This drives people crazy. It goes against everything we've been taught. We've been told that sincerity is strength, that authenticity wins, that if you're transparent, people will respect you. But Greene isn't talking about friendship or romantic love. He's talking about power. And in the game of power, anyone who knows your intentions can anticipate you or sabotage you. Think about this. Every time you openly declared a big goal, what happened? How many people suddenly stood in your way? How many began planting doubts, discouraging you, telling you it was unrealistic? Not always out of malice. Sometimes simply because your ambition makes them feel inadequate, or because they see an opportunity to stop you before you become too powerful. Greene isn't saying to lie constantly. He's saying something more subtle. Create fog around your real moves. Show one thing while doing another. Let people think they understand you while you're operating on a completely different level. Steve Jobs was a master of this. He spoke publicly about one thing while the company was secretly working on completely different projects. Not because he was dishonest, but because he understood that the moment you reveal your next move, anyone can copy you, block you, or get there before you. In business, it's crucial not to reveal your cards. Now, the typical reaction is, but I don't want to live like that. Always hidden, always suspicious. And here lies the fundamental misunderstanding. Greene isn't describing how the ideal world should be. He's describing how the real world is. You can hate it as much as you want. You can choose not to play this game, but others will play it anyway. And if you are completely transparent in a world where others are not, you are simply vulnerable. Law number 7. Get others to do the work for you, but take the credit. This is the one that infuriates almost everyone. It seems like the peak of disgusting opportunism, exploiting other people's work and then strutting around claiming all the credit. And that is exactly what happens. Everywhere, all the time. The leaders remembered by history rarely did everything themselves. Almost never, in fact. Alexander the Great had his generals. Caesar had his legions. Edison had a team of engineers who did the technical work while he took the patents. Steve Jobs didn't write code. Elon Musk doesn't build rockets with his own hands. But they are the ones we remember, the ones who are celebrated, the ones who hold power. Why? Because they understood something that 99% of people don't. Power doesn't lie in doing. It lies in directing. Look at what happens in real companies. There is always someone doing brilliant work in the details, the genius engineer, the creative designer, the obsessive researcher. And then there is someone above them who presents that work, sells it, and puts their face on it. And we all hate that person. They're a parasite. They do nothing and just take the credit. But Greene is telling you to look deeper. That person orchestrated everything. They chose the right people. They created the environment. They gave direction. And most importantly, they understood how to turn technical work into real power. This doesn't mean it's morally right. Greene isn't making a moral argument. He's making an argument about power. And the reality is that if you want to rise, if you want influence, you cannot do everything alone. It's impossible. You must learn to use the abilities of others. Now, is there an ethical way to do this? Yes. You can recognize people privately, pay them well, build a strong team, but publicly, you must be the face. Because power is perception, and perception goes to the one who occupies the central space. I'll give you a personal example that Greene implicitly tells through his own story. When he wrote the 48 Laws of Power, he used centuries of stories, biographies, and historical texts. He leveraged the work of hundreds of other authors, took their research, synthesized it, reformulated it. Is he a parasite because of that? No, he created something new, but the credit goes to him. The name on the cover is his, and that is the game. If this law disturbs you, ask yourself, is it really wrong? Or am I just afraid to admit that this is how the world works? Law number 12. Use selective honesty to disarm. This is perhaps the most insidious one, because it takes something we consider sacred, honesty, and turns it into a tool of manipulation. Greene says, a small truth can lower the other person's defenses. Think about how this works. Someone tells you something surprisingly honest about themselves, a vulnerability, a past mistake, something intimate. And what happens inside you? Suddenly you trust them more. You think, wow, they're authentic, they're real. And in that moment, you are disarmed. Now, this can happen genuinely. Someone can truly be vulnerable and authentic without ulterior motives. But it can also be calculated. It can be a strategic truth shared to create an illusion of trust. You see this constantly in politics. The politician who admits a small mistake to seem human while hiding much bigger ones. The entrepreneur who shares a story of failure to create connection while selling you something. I'm not saying every act of vulnerability is manipulation, but I am saying that Greene is right when he says honesty can be used as a weapon. And the most disturbing part? We all do it, unconsciously. How many times have you shared a small truth about yourself to make someone feel closer? To create an alliance? To lower their guard? Not necessarily with malicious intent, but strategically. Greene simply makes us aware of what is already happening beneath the surface. The problem isn't that this law is immoral. The problem is that it forces us to admit that even honesty can be performative, that even vulnerability can be strategic. And that disturbs us because we want to believe that at least that is pure. Law number 15. Crush your enemy totally. This is probably the most hated law in the book, the most criticized, the most immoral. It sounds like something straight out of the mouth of a ruthless dictator. But then you read Greene's logic. An enemy left alive will eventually strike back. Now, before everyone cries scandal, let's be clear. Greene isn't literally talking about killing people. He's talking about power. He's saying that if someone is your real enemy, someone who wants to destroy you, sabotage you, take what you have, you cannot afford half measures. Why? Because compassion in that context doesn't make you noble. It makes you vulnerable. Think about the times you forgave someone who betrayed you. Maybe at work, maybe in a friendship. You gave them another chance. And what happened? In 80% of cases, they betrayed you again because nothing changed. You only showed that you're willing to tolerate betrayal. Greene is saying something brutally true. Forgiveness is often interpreted as weakness, not strength. In nature, when an animal shows weakness, it gets attacked. Among civilized humans, we pretend it's different. But beneath the surface, the dynamics are the same. Now, does this mean you should become a psychopath who destroys anyone who looks at you the wrong way? No. It means you must understand the difference between a real enemy and someone with whom you simply have a resolvable conflict. Most people are not your enemies. They're just competing with you or have different interests. You can negotiate with them. You can find compromises. But when you identify a true enemy, someone who won't stop until they see you destroyed, Greene says you must act decisively. Leave no room for future revenge. Give no opportunity for a counterattack. Julius Caesar understood this. When he crossed the Rubicon, he knew there was no middle ground, total victory or death. Half measures would have destroyed him. This law disturbs us because we want to believe everyone deserves a second chance, that forgiveness is always noble, that compassion always wins. But Greene is showing you reality. In the game of power, misplaced mercy can cost you everything. And before you label this monstrous, ask yourself, how many times has your kindness been used against you? And now we arrive at the last one, perhaps the most sophisticated and the most misunderstood of all. Law number 48. Assume formlessness. What does it mean? It means not having a fixed position, rigid values, or a stable identity that can be used against you. This completely blows people's minds. We live in an age obsessed with identity. Be yourself. Find your authentic voice. Build your personal brand. And Greene says, all of that makes you predictable. And predictability is death in the game of power. Water has no form. It adapts to the container. It flows around obstacles. It cannot be struck because it has no fixed structure to hit. Bruce Lee said the same thing. Be water, my friend. It wasn't empty mysticism. It was strategy. When you have a rigid identity, I'm a conservative, I'm a progressive, I'm a tech entrepreneur, people know exactly which buttons to push. They know what will trigger you. They know how to manipulate you. But if you are fluid, if you can adapt, if you can change form depending on the context, you become elusive. Does this sound cynical? Maybe. Does it sound like having no principles? Maybe. But Greene is making a crucial distinction that 99% of people miss. Having deep values does not mean having a rigid identity. You can have solid internal principles while showing external flexibility. You can know exactly who you are, while others can never fully pin you down. That's what makes this law so difficult to understand. He's not saying to be an empty opportunist without values. He's saying not to become so rigid in your public identity that you make yourself vulnerable. The most powerful people in history were chameleon-like. Roosevelt could speak to communists and capitalists. Churchill could be a ruthless warrior and a sensitive poet. Obama could be an intellectual professor and a street organizer. Not because they were fake, but because they understood that power requires fluidity. Most people build an identity and then spend the rest of their lives defending it. But if you are like water, attacks pass right through you. There is nothing solid to hit. This is perhaps the most Zen law of all, and ironically, the one most misunderstood as cynical. And here we reach the core point. Why don't 99% of people understand these laws? Because they read them as moral prescriptions instead of descriptions of reality. Greene isn't saying you should live this way. He's saying this is how power works, whether you like it or not. You can choose not to play this game. It's a legitimate choice. You can live a life of rigid principles, total transparency, unconditional trust in others. But you must know that others are playing by different rules. And if you don't understand these dynamics, you will be a pawn in someone else's game. Greene himself didn't write this book to teach you how to become a manipulator. He wrote it to remove the blindfold from your eyes, to show you what really happens beneath the surface of human interactions. And the most powerful thing? Once you see the game, you can't unsee it. You begin to notice when someone uses selective honesty, when they conceal their true intentions, when they take credit that isn't theirs, when they crush a rival, when they are fluid instead of rigid. And at that moment, you have a choice. You can be outraged and call it immoral, or you can understand that this is simply human nature in action. Not good, not bad, simply true. So here's my invitation to you. In the coming weeks, observe. Don't necessarily act, just observe. Watch who around you applies these laws without even knowing them. Watch who rises and who stays stuck. And ask yourself, is it coincidence or is it strategy? Look at the leaders you admire. Are they really transparent, or do they hide far more than they show? Did they do everything alone, or are they brilliant at orchestrating others? Do they use vulnerability to create strategic connection? And most importantly, look at yourself. How many of these laws do you already apply unconsciously? Because I bet you use at least 3 or 4 without even realizing it. The difference between you and someone who truly has power might be just this. They know they're doing it. You don't. Let me know in the comments, which of these 5 laws struck or disturbed you the most? And above all, why? Because that's where something interesting about yourself is waiting to be explored. If you've made it this far and enjoyed the video, I ask only that you subscribe to the channel to support my work. Until next time.